Forget what you think you know about smartphone evolution for a second. We've seen them get bigger, pack more cameras, and boast batteries that last for days. But what if a brand decided to shrink? Not in screen size, no, but in sheer, unapologetic thinness. That's the audacious gamble Samsung is taking with the Galaxy S25 Edge. A phone so slim, it almost feels like a concept sketch brought to life. But in this relentless pursuit of svelte, have they sliced away too much of what makes a flagship a flagship? Let's find out if this is the future of design, or a beautifully flawed experiment. So what exactly is the Galaxy S25 Edge? Picture this, a mere 5.8 millimeters thick. Let that sink in. That's thinner than most pencils. And it weighs just 163 grams, which, for a phone packing a 6.7-inch screen, is frankly astounding. It's as light as the smallest Galaxy S25, but in a league of its own when it comes to slimness. Samsung hasn't skimped on materials for this wafer-thin marvel. We're talking a Gorilla Glass ceramic 2 front, which, by the way, sits just below the S25 Ultra's Gorilla Armor 2 in terms of outright toughness, but still boasts impressive drop resistance from 2 meters. The back is Gorilla Glass Victus 2, and the frame? That's titanium, chosen for its strength and lightness over aluminum. And yes, it retains that crucial IP68 dust and water resistance, so it can survive a dunk up to 1.5 meters for 30 minutes. But here's the kicker, the question that's been buzzing around since the leaks first surfaced. Who exactly asked for a phone this thin? In an era where users are crying out for better battery life, more robust cooling, and versatile camera systems, did we need a supermodel smartphone whose primary party trick is its profile? It's a bold move, positioning the S25 Edge as a statement piece, a breath of fresh air in a market of chunky camera bumps and hefty devices. But as we'll see, this razor-thin ambition comes with some equally sharp compromises. Alright, let's crack open the box. And it's a slim one, matching the phone itself. Inside, you'll find the Galaxy S25 Edge, looking rather striking. Alongside it, there's a USB-C to USB-C cable for charging and data transfer, and the usual sheaf of user manuals and warranty information. And that's it, no charger. Yes, we know, it's 2025, and this is the norm for many flagships. But for a device commanding a premium price, and one that supports a specific type of fast charging, Samsung's PPS protocol over power delivery, you'll need to factor in buying a compatible 25W charger separately if you don't already have one. Just something to keep in mind. Now, let's talk design in detail. The S25 Edge isn't a radical departure from the overall Galaxy S25 family aesthetic. Flat back, flat titanium sides, gently rounded corners. The 6.7-inch display on the front is framed by impressively thin bezels, giving it a very modern all-screen look. The camera island on the back, however, is where it distinguishes itself from the S25 and S25 Plus. Instead of separate rings, the two cameras sit within a slightly protruding glass piece. And this leads to one of the S25 Edge's most, let's call them quirky characteristics, the wobble. Place this phone on a flat surface, and it wobbles. Tap it, and it continues to jiggle for a moment. A case will solve this, sure, but for a phone that screams, "Look at my design," it's an odd oversight. It comes in 3 familiar titanium colors from the S25 Ultra lineup: icy blue, silver, and jet black. The unit we have here is titanium silver, and it does look premium. Dimension-wise, again, 5.8 millimeters thick, excluding that camera bump, and 163 grams. It's undeniably impressive. But how does it feel in hand? Well, it's incredibly light, and that thinness makes it disappear into a pocket. However, those flat titanium edges, while looking sharp, can also feel a bit sharp in the palm after extended use. It's not uncomfortable for everyone, but it's less forgiving than a more rounded design. Ergonomics are, therefore, a mixed bag. The ultrasonic under-display fingerprint reader, thankfully, is well-placed and performs just as snappily as on its S25 siblings. So a true marvel of engineering in terms of sheer dimensions and build quality, but with a couple of asterisks when it comes to everyday usability. Okay, let's turn our attention to the window, to this phone's soul, the display. And Samsung usually doesn't disappoint here. The S25 Edge packs a 6.7-inch LTPO AMOLED 2X panel. That means you're getting a variable 120Hz refresh rate for smooth scrolling and animations, HDR10 plus support for vibrant contrast, and a sharp 1440 by 3120 pixel resolution, which translates to a crisp 513 pixels per inch. It's a beautiful panel, no doubt. Colors are punchy, blacks are deep, and viewing angles are excellent. However, a couple of things to note for the spec heads. Dolby Vision is still missing in action. Samsung seems firmly planted in the HDR10 Plus camp. Also, it's an 8-bit color depth display, not 10-bit. For most people, this won't be an issue, but if you're a creative professional scrutinizing color gradients, you might notice they aren't quite as smooth as on a true 10-bit panel. Performance-wise, this display gets plenty bright. In manual mode, it can hit around 768 nits, and in auto mode, when the sun is blazing, it can boost up to a very respectable 1416 nits. Outdoor visibility is not an issue here. The refresh rate offers two modes, standard and adaptive. Confusingly, both are somewhat adaptive. Standard caps out at 60 Hz, but will still dial down to 1 Hz when the screen is idle to save power. Adaptive allows the full 1 Hz to 120 Hz range. An interesting quirk. For 24 FPS and 48 FPS video playback, standard mode locks to 60 Hz, while adaptive will correctly match the refresh rate to the content. So, for the best viewing experience, adaptive is the way to go. Under the hood, the S25 Edge is powered by Qualcomm's latest and greatest, the Snapdragon 8 Elite, specifically the 4 Galaxy Edition. This means the 2 Prime Oryon V2 Phoenix LTPO cores are clocked a bit higher at 4.47 GHz compared to the standard Elite's 4.32 GHz, and the Adreno 830 GPU also gets a speed bump. This is an octa-core chip with those 2 Prime cores, plus 6 Oryon V2 Phoenix M performance cores running at 3.53 GHz. Memory-wise, you get a healthy 12 GB of RAM, paired with either 256 GB or 512 GB of fast UFS 4.0 storage. Now, in short bursts and for everyday tasks, this phone flies. Apps open quickly, multitasking is smooth, and the One UI 7 interface feels fluid. Initial benchmark scores place it right up there with other Snapdragon 8 Elite devices. The 4 Galaxy tweaks give it a slight edge in some CPU-intensive tasks, but it's not a night and day difference in real-world scenarios. But, and this is a colossal but, remember how we talked about this phone being incredibly thin? Well, physics is a harsh mistress. That svelte chassis has massive implications for sustained performance and heat dissipation. And folks, this is where the S25 Edge stumbles, trips, and faceplants. The phone gets hot. Not just warm, but uncomfortably hot during demanding tasks like extended gaming sessions or lengthy 8K video recording. And when it gets hot, it throttles. Oh boy, does it throttle. In CPU stress tests, performance starts to dip within the first 5 minutes. The GPU stability score in tests like 3DMark Wildlife Extreme is below 50%. What does this mean for you? If you're a heavy gamer, if you push your phone hard for long periods, the S25 Edge is, frankly, not worth buying. You'll experience significant performance degradation as the phone desperately tries to cool itself down. That initial flagship level speed will evaporate, leaving you with a stuttery, frustrating experience. We saw thermal images showing the back and frame reaching some pretty toasty temperatures. This isn't just a minor inconvenience. It's a fundamental flaw for anyone expecting consistent peak performance from a phone at this price point. No one asked for a super thin phone that cooks itself when you try to use its flagship power. Okay, let's talk cameras. Given the thin design, Samsung had to make choices. The S25 Edge features a dual camera setup on the back, completely skipping any kind of telephoto lens. What you get is the 200 megapixel main sensor, borrowed directly from the powerhouse Galaxy S25 Ultra. That's the ISO CELLHP2, a 1/1.3-inch sensor with an f1.7 aperture and OIS. Alongside it is a 12 megapixel ultra-wide camera, the same Sony IMX564 sensor found in the S25 and S25 Plus, but this time, thankfully, with autofocus. The front camera is the familiar 12 megapixel shooter used across the S25 line. So, how do these perform? The 200 megapixels main camera, when shooting binned 12 megapixels images, produces excellent photos. They look pretty much identical to the S25 Ultra's output. Sharp, detailed, with wide dynamic range, accurate colors, and just the right amount of saturation. The 200 megapixels mode itself, it captures more raw detail, but sharpness is often unsatisfactory, so sticking to 12 megapixels is usually best. Portraits are good, with decent subject separation. The 2x crop zoom, thanks to that massive main sensor, is also surprisingly good. There's minimal loss in sharpness, and the processing remains consistent, so even without a dedicated zoom lens, you can get very usable 2x shots. The ultra-wide camera is decent, but not quite flagship level. You might see some soft patches, and the dynamic range is a bit more limited than the main camera. However, the addition of autofocus is a big plus, enabling some pretty good macro shots. The automatic switching between main and ultra-wide for macro can be a bit finicky, but you can turn it off. The 12 megapixels front camera is a known quantity and delivers excellent selfies, plenty of detail, natural skin tones, wide dynamic range, and reliable autofocus. It can get a bit soft indoors, but that's typical. This is where things get a bit disappointing for a phone in this class. In the standard photo mode, the main camera often produces rather soft and noisy low-light images. It rarely switches to the dedicated night mode automatically, so you'll need to select it manually. Night mode does improve things significantly. It cleans up noise, adds sharpness, albeit artificially, boosts contrast and saturation, and brightens shadows. However, it can be noticeably slower to capture than competing solutions. The 2x crop zoom in low light is surprisingly usable if you engage night mode. Without it, images are even softer and noisier than the 1x photo mode. The ultra-wide in low light is just okay. Even with night mode, the stills aren't terribly sharp, but they offer decent detail, good dynamic range, and color processing that matches the main camera. The S25 Edge matches its siblings with up to 8K at 30 FPS from the main camera, with a Pro mode unlocking 24 FPS. The ultra-wide and selfie cams cap at 4K 60 FPS. You get 10-bit HDR video recording and the new Galaxy Log mode for color grading enthusiasts. There's also a neat AI audio eraser in the gallery. Main camera footage is excellent, clean, detailed, sharp, with great dynamic range and punchy colors, even in low light. The ultra-wide video is good in daylight, but struggles with softness, noise, and clipped highlights in low light. Stabilization, as always with Samsung, is solid. So a very capable main camera in good light and decent video, but the lack of a telephoto and underwhelming low-light performance without manual intervention hold it back. Powering this ultra-slim device is a relatively modest 3,900 mAh battery. For a 6.7-inch phone with a power-hungry Snapdragon 8 Elite, that capacity immediately raises eyebrows. And honestly, we expected battery life to be pretty dire. The reality? It's not abysmal, but it's certainly not a strong point. The phone achieved an active use score of around 12 hours and 6 minutes in tests. That's not too far off some competitors like the Pixel 9 Pro XL, but it pales in comparison to the larger S25 family members or battery champions like the iPhone 16 Pro Max or other Android behemoths. Interestingly, it holds up decently in video playback, likely thanks to that efficient LTPO display. For light to moderate users, it might just get you through a day, but power users will be reaching for a charger before bedtime. Speaking of charging, the S25 Edge supports 25W wired charging via power delivery, with Samsung's PPS protocol and 15W wireless charging, Qi 2 ready. Since the battery capacity is similar to the vanilla S25, charging times are somewhat comparable, though the Edge does manage to hit 100% a bit faster than the S25, taking about 1 hour and 4 minutes. However, when you look at the broader competition, 25W charging feels slow. Many rivals offer significantly faster charging speeds. Samsung does provide some battery health-preserving options, like disabling fast charging or limiting the charge to 80 or 95%, which is a nice touch. But overall, battery life and charging are definite compromises made for that super slim design. On the software front, the Galaxy S25 Edge runs the latest Android 15 with Samsung's One UI 7 on top. It's a mature, feature-rich interface, and if you've used a Samsung phone recently, you'll feel right at home. Samsung is promising an excellent 7 major OS updates and 7 years of security patches, which is fantastic for longevity. One UI 7 brings some visual tweaks and a big focus on AI smarts. A notable new feature debuting with the S25 Edge and coming to other S25s, is an update to the multimodal AI agents, now with a visual engine powered by Google's Gemini AI. This allows you to point your camera at an object and ask the AI questions about it. Pretty neat. For audio, the S25 Edge uses a hybrid stereo speaker setup, one bottom-firing speaker, and the earpiece doubling as the second. Loudness is rated as good, but it's quieter than the rest of the S25 lineup. That thin chassis strikes again. Less room means less resonance. The sound tuning is similar to the S25 Ultra, but tracks sound flatter with noticeably less bass. They're serviceable, but not immersive. Connectivity is top-notch. 5G, eSIM support, Wi-Fi 7, Bluetooth 5.4, NFC, and ultra-wideband support are all on board. So we arrive at the crucial question: the price and who this phone is actually for. The Samsung Galaxy S25 Edge is not cheap. The 256GB model with 12GB of RAM comes in at £1,099 in the UK and $1,099.99 in the US. The 512GB version is listed at €1,318.90 or £949. Note: the provided £949 for 512GB seems lower than the 256GB pound price. Please double-check this pricing detail if it's for a different region or a typo in the source. This pricing slots it right between the Galaxy S25 Plus and the S25 Ultra, at least by MSRP. When you look at the competition, the S25 Plus offers a more well-rounded package for less money, outperforming the Edge in several key areas, apart from the main camera sensor. The S25 Ultra is simply the better phone overall, if budget isn't the primary concern. Then you have the iPhone 16 Pro Max, or perhaps even the rumored iPhone 17 Air, if thinness is your Apple ecosystem goal. Android alternatives like the Xiaomi 15 Ultra or Vivo X200 Pro offer far superior camera versatility, battery life, and charging, albeit in much larger packages. Even the Google Pixel 9 Pro XL offers a more versatile camera setup and is likely cheaper. So, the verdict? The Galaxy S25 Edge is a fascinating, beautifully engineered device that prioritizes form over almost everything else. The pros are clear: unrivaled portability and a stunningly thin premium titanium build. Raw performance, when it's not throttling, is good. You get the excellent One UI experience with long software support, and the main camera takes lovely daylight photos. But the cons are significant and, for many, deal breakers. The IP68 rating feels basic at this price. The battery is small and charging is comparatively slow. The speakers are flat. And the biggest elephants in the room: the abysmal sustained performance due to severe thermal throttling and heating issues. Again, it's not for heavy gaming or demanding tasks. The lack of a telephoto camera and suboptimal low-light photography also hurt. And finally, that steep launch price makes it a very hard sell. Samsung might be trying to carve out a new niche here for fashion-conscious users who value design above all else and are willing to pay a premium for it. But for the vast majority of users, the compromises are just too great. The S25 Edge is a statement, a conversation starter. But it's a difficult phone to recommend unless you fit into that very specific demographic that values thinness above all practical considerations. It's a beautiful paradox, and perhaps a glimpse into a future where phones might get thinner again, but hopefully without sacrificing so much of what makes them truly smart.